Are you guys ready for another crusade? I'm not gonna lie, I'm very excited for this series. Now, when it comes to the Crusades, I really love them. I love the first Crusade because it is the funniest thing I've ever watched on this channel's history. The first Crusade series, not only by Kings and Generals, but by Extra History, make me laugh to this day. Like, I just remember watching them and just like it just broke me, just the insanity and how unhinged these like European team ups are. And obviously we're well aware of the first crusade. We also covered the fourth crusade on this channel. That's the one where it stopped kind of being funny. And Constantinople got sacked. They didn't even make it to the Holy Land, as far as I'm aware. And then there's the third crusade, which is mainly known for Saladin. But the second crusade's interesting is that I don't know anything about it, like any of the characters or any of the events. So this is definitely the one that I'm least familiar with. I had basic understandings of all the others, but this one is just, yeah, I don't know what I'm in store for. Though I'm wondering if it's gonna be like, I'm expecting a lot of, a lot of infighting, a lot of war crimes, and unintentionally hilarious events to unfold. So that's what I'm most looking forward to on this series by the Great Kings and Generals. Now, if you want to watch this original 4 hour and 23 minutes and 5 seconds masterpiece, the link to this video is down in the description down below. And if you want to help support me or my channel in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, maybe consider joining my Patreon or being a YouTube member. It's only $1. I've made it as of right now, so yeah, it would really help me out a lot. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? I'm excited for it to go on a crusade again. Let's get to it. Let's watch the Second Crusade by Kings and Generals. The Muslim World Strikes Back. Is my audio being picked? Okay, thank goodness.
The Holy Land stands on a knife's edge. In the wake of Baldwin I's death, kingdoms fracture, alliances waver, and new powers rise from the deserts and citadels of Syria. A new king, Baldwin Labor, must hold together a fragile realm beset by enemies, from the horsemen of Aleppo to the ships of Venice. Across 2 decades of war, the Crusader states will face their greatest tests yet. Battles fought not only with swords and faith, but through cunning diplomacy, betrayal, and endurance. From the ashes of disaster to the thundering charge of redemption, from royal captivity to the clash of fleets upon the sea, every decision will decide whether the cross still flies over the east or is swallowed by the crescent forever. This is the story of the Latin kingdom's survival and the turning of an age in the Crusader world. This video covers the events from the aftermath of the First Crusade to the end of the Second Crusade.
Alright, good to know.
Do you know why thousands of people, with the death of King Baldwin I of Jerusalem in 1118, the Latin knights and barons present in the Holy City had to choose his successor? Baldwin didn't have a natural-born heir, so in theory his...
I really want to quickly comment on Baldwin. When we were covering the original Crusade, the First Crusade series by Kings and Generals, I didn't really like the guy. Like, I thought he was kind of like a snake. The way he got the county of Edessa was very, underhanded. It's like he kind of let that dude who adopted him get killed, essentially. He didn't kill him, but he didn't rescue him either. And then, kind of the saying goes that when his brother died, and he was more happy about his inheritance of Jerusalem than the death of his brother and stuff. I don't know, like, I was like, also, while most of the other crusaders were off fighting, he just chilled out in Edessa and I was like, man, he just let everyone else do the hard work and then got all the reward. So that was kind of my impression of him at the first part, but my opinion did change after. I mean, he's still, I would call him not a good person, but then again, I wouldn't call any of these people good, especially by our standards, so I would have to judge everyone, definitely, by that. But point is, I think he proved himself great as a warrior and as a king. Like, once he got Jerusalem, he had to keep fighting the Fatimids and every other, like, group from, you know, Egypt and the further east, and he was really effective as a king and as a warrior. Like, he really proved himself to me, you know, as a warrior and as a king, and I'm like, dang, alright, you know, Baldwin, I realize you did have it. So I feel like by the end, at first my impressions were mainly negative, but by the end I'm like, okay, he was a good king, you know, and and a great warrior as well. So overall, you know, rip Baldwin the First.
Eldest brother, Eustace, seemed to be his most logical successor. However, Eustace was far away in Europe, and preferred to rule his safer family holdings in Bouillon rather than risk it all in the Holy Land. Only after he came under pressure from his courtiers, shaming him for not fulfilling his family duties, did he finally decide to move east to inherit all Baldwin had fought so hard for.
Wow. Alright, a reluctant hero. That's a good setting.
Meanwhile, Jerusalem was in more immediate need than ever for a strong and decisive leader. The Grand Vizier of the Fatimid Caliphate, Al-Afdal, wanted to punish the Latins for the latest invasion of Egypt, and saw Jerusalem's interregnum as an opportunity to do just that. To that end, Al-Afdal made an alliance with Baldwin's mortal enemy, Tughtekin, Emir of Damascus. The Fatimid army gathered in Ashdod and invited the Burid warlord to join their forces against the Latins. Tughtekin was eager to undermine any Frankish influence in the Levant, and quickly sent a delegation to Jerusalem, demanding all Frankish possessions beyond Jordan. Everyone in the royal council in Jerusalem was keenly aware the odds were not in their favour, and fell into hopelessness. Everyone except for...
You know, I have had quite the fascination for the Crusader states, because it is such a unique, like, point in history, especially like near the Middle East and whatnot, where there was just these mini kingdoms and essentially of Christendom, you know, and it's like probably one of the few times where the Romans weren't alone in fighting whatever was eastward. But yeah, like when I had done some, like, I've seen some like videos and they would mention like the Crusader states were reliant on like on Europe still for like supplies and stuff, and I had heard something, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but like that, you know, they were essentially dependent on whatever could come you know, westward, like still on Europe for, I think, like manpower and stuff. So I got the impression that they weren't completely like self-sustaining in a sense, like they needed, you know, to still be supplied, and we kind of got a taste of that in the first Crusade series, I feel, where they were trying to send, like, you know, more manpower here, but the Sultanate of Rome, is that what it's called, managed to, like, you know, destroy them, and so they never got their manpower. And I thought, like, oh, won't they just have to, like, rely on the locals and essentially try to become self-sustaining in some way? But apparently not, at least not fully. So I found that kind of interesting, like the logistics of the kingdom, you get what I mean? That is if what I heard offhandedly was true, you know? But it is still just an interesting period, the whole Crusader states. I find this such an interesting time in history, and that I've actually really been wanting to look more into. So I'm really happy that Kings and Generals dropped this video so I can, like, have an excuse to look more into it on this channel, you know?
Joscelin of Courtenay. Confidently, he proposed that King Baldwin I's cousin, Baldwin le Beau, Count of Edessa, be elected the next king of Jerusalem.
Oh, wait.
For many nobles, this idea seemed quite reasonable. Baldwin le Beau was the eldest surviving leader of the First Crusade, which
Yeah, but then there's Baldwin's brother who's on the way, so... Okay.
made him an experienced warrior and a cunning diplomat. Jocelyn also hoped that as a reward for putting Baldwin of Edessa on the throne of Jerusalem, he would be given a county of Edessa. Having the support of Jerusalem's patriarch, Arnulf, Baldwin of Edessa was summoned to Jerusalem and on the 14th of April 1118 was crowned as Baldwin II. Shortly after this, Jocelyn received his desired county upon swearing an oath of loyalty for Baldwin. Other lords like Roger of Salerno and Pons of Tripoli followed suit and recognized themselves as Baldwin II's vassals. Consequently, the Kingdom of Jerusalem formally became the most powerful Crusader state in the Levant. Back in Europe, as soon as Eustace heard the news in a
Okay, that's interesting. That all the other Crusader states seemed to just kind of fall in line with what Jerusalem was doing. Because by the end of the First Crusade, I got the impression that they were kind of just on their own. And they were, in a sense, that, and fighting each other too. But it seems like at this point now, that they've just fallen in line to follow the leader of Jerusalem. So that's... I'm wondering if that might help the unity a little bit or not. Oh yeah, and Eustace. Yeah, I was gonna say, he's on his way, so how's this Baldwin stuff gonna work? This is kind of drama. That depends. Eustace didn't want to go, so I'm wondering if this is like, he might just shrug his shoulders and go back, or if he's gonna be pushed to take it. I don't know, he doesn't strike me as he wants to do this, though. So, I guess we'll see what he does.
Apulia, he returned back to his European domains, sparing Jerusalem from a potential succession crisis.
Oh, thank goodness. That's like one of the few times in this channel's history where we've seen someone not fight for what they think or claim it's theirs. They're just happy with what they have, and then they effed off back to their... That's like the only time in this channel's history I've seen something like that. Normally it's, oh, he took that, I'm gonna go to fight him and take what's mine. So Eustace, you're a W. You're the first person to just be content with what you have. I like that.
Just like his predecessor, Baldwin le Beau did not sit idly by as his enemies gathered around his realm. Refusing Toghtekin's impossible demands, he rallied his forces, and together with his newly acquired vassals, he intended to confront the threat from Cairo and Damascus all at the same time. In the west, en route to Jaffa, Fatimid and Frankish armies rushed for engagement, but realizing that neither of them had the advantage of surprise, both armies ended up trapped in a stalemate for several months until both of them decided to retreat. Through his hasty actions, it wouldn't be the last time Baldwin II would save Jerusalem.
Alright, good start to his reign. I'm immediately checking the Fatimids, showing that, yeah, we're not weak now, just because Baldwin I is gone, you know. That's a pretty good start, I think. I'm wondering what the Crusader manpower is, though. As of right now, how much people could they muster for an army? Because, like, by the end of the First Crusade series, they were mustering up to, like, a few hundred knights and stuff. So I'm wondering how much manpower do they actually have for wars and stuff, even all together now, you know? Considering that the other Crusader states seem to be, you know, playing the role of vassals now, so... You know what I mean?
While to the northeast of Jordan, Jocelyn of Courtenay had delayed his departure to Edessa by fighting the forces of Damascus, dealing with ongoing raids in Galilee orchestrated by Toghtekin's son, Buri. When his forces finally joined with Baldwin II, he decided to intercept the Damascene army at Dara in modern Syria, not to be confused with the battlefield where, in 535 AD, Belisarius won a crushing victory against the Sassanid Empire. In the engagement that followed, the Franks provoked the young and inexperienced Buri to rush forward, luring him straight into an ambush and defeating his Damascene host entirely.
Wow.
Another threat on the horizon was the local Bedouin tribes, who used the power vacuum in the Transjordan to settle into the region and raid trade caravans near the Yarmouk River. Josselin made an attempt at a daring night attack on one of the Bedouin camps, with the aid of Galilean barons Godfrey and William of Burr. Numbering around 150 horsemen, the Crusaders divided their force into 3 squadrons, each commanded by its leader. Though the plan looked promising at the start, its execution went terribly wrong for the Franks. Josselin's group got lost and stuck between the sandhills, while the Bedouins, already aware of the Latin presence, surrounded the Burr brothers and routed them. Godfrey was killed during the fighting, and around 100 knights were taken as prisoners. Only Josselin, with a handful of men, returned to Tiberias and reported what had happened to Baldwin II.
Okay, that's so far the first setback. Good start. This is the first setback. Let's see how Baldwin rebounds.
Evidently annoyed by this new nomadic thorn in his side, the King of Jerusalem sent an entire army to confront the Bedouin threat. Realizing they had no chance with the full might of Jerusalem, the Muslim nomads panicked and opened talks with the Franks, promising the return of the prisoners in exchange for a peaceful duration in Transjordan until the end of summer 1119. This stabilized the Crusader state's southern frontier, but as this was happening, a conflict between the Principality of Antioch and the city of Aleppo was spiraling out of control. The death of Sultan Muhammad Tapar in 1118 sped up the fragmentation of the Great Seljuk Empire, whose central authority had already been weakening for some time. When the Sultan died, he was succeeded by Mahmud II, but due to the new Sultan's young age, he could not wield any authority among his powerful governors. So it was that Mahmud's uncle, Sanjar, ruler of Khorasan, seized control, turning the teenage Sultan into his puppet. Under Sanjar's administration, the Seljuk state mainly concerned itself with its territories in eastern Iran, which made the empire's western regions open to internal divisions. This negligence of the central authority of the Seljuks led to warlords in western Syria carving up their own domains in the region. Sultan Tapar's body was not yet cold when Toghtekin started a conflict with the powerful city of Aleppo, which was governed by a eunuch of Armenian origin named Yerukhtash. Yerukhtash, who had come to power via coup, was quick to look for allies outside his city. To that end, he made concessions to the Franks in Antioch by giving away a strategic fort and pilgrim station called Al-Quba. This infuriated the citizens of Aleppo, who rebelled against Yerukhtash. In a final act of desperation, the eunuch pleaded for help from Najim ad-Din al-Ghazi of the Artikid dynasty. Ilghazi was the Atabeg of the peripheral city of Mardin near the Tigris River, and was more than happy to take the opportunity to extend his influence over Aleppo. Expecting an easy prize, the Atabeg rushed to Aleppo, hoping that Yerukhtash would open up the city gates for him. But as the Artikid had reached the city walls, an unexpected surprise awaited him. Yerukhtash had already been killed by an angry mob, which had subsequently barred the gates of the city in hopes of discouraging the warlord from Mardin. Ilghazi quickly realized that the plan had missed the boat, so he decided to send his son, Kizil, into the city as an ambassador. The warlord of Mardin was well aware that in order to maintain balance in Syria, he had to make an alliance with Toghtekin, which as time would tell, proved to be the right choice. But bloody power shifts inside Aleppo were far from over. Sultan Shah ibn Radwan and his vizier Ibn al-Milhi, disgusted by Aleppo's dependence on Artukid influence, decided to hand the city over to the Emir of Homs, Kirkan. What Ibn al-Milhi did not consider was that Ilghazi and Toghtekin had well-maintained relations. In a lightning campaign, they both quickly neutralized their opponents. Consequently, Ilghazi took Aleppo while Toghtekin took Homs. Thereafter, Ilghazi became one of the most influential Atabegs in northern Syria, possessing the cities of Mardin and Aleppo, and laying foundations for the Artukid dynasty to expand their influence across northern Syria and Iraq. Now, with matters between his Muslim neighbors secured, he could finally focus his attention to the west.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They're so close. Like, the borders are... I'm liking seeing just how so much of these, like, smaller principalities, cities, states, kingdoms, like, some of these things, I don't know what to call them, counties, like, but, like, all these smaller like everything's fracturing, and then everyone's just kind of fighting each other and turning on each other. It's really interesting to see. And Antioch, when it was still at the foundation of the Crusader states, was pretty sought after. It may have been a big part of it probably was Bohemon's leadership, and him being a great general, and everyone kind of really wanting that Antioch itself, because it is a very famous city where a lot happened. So I'm wondering how Antioch is doing now, though. They kind of did play sort of a more, second. It seems like Jerusalem is now fully established as the top dog of the states, right? That's been established. But I'm wondering, like, how Antioch is doing and how powerful they are at this point.
While the Muslims fought amongst themselves, the Crusaders smelled opportunity. This was especially true of Roger of Salerno. As an Antiochene regent for underage Bohemond II and a vassal of Baldwin le Boar of Jerusalem, Roger intended to tighten the principality's grip over the northern and eastern parts of Syria, and crushing the squabbling factions in Aleppo seemed to be the perfect opportunity to achieve this. Having already received the fortress of Al-Kaba from the late Uruktash, the Frankish leader pushed even further. In 1118, Roger combined his force with Jocelyn of Edessa and the Prince of Armenian Cilicia, Tauros. Together they jointly captured the northern fortresses of Azaz and Bizar, thus threatening to surround Aleppo from 3 sides. Never in the history of the Outremer had the Crusaders come so close to capturing this city. The Latin offensive of Roger imposed a serious threat to El-Ghazi's freshly acquired territories, which only made the confrontation with the Artukids more inevitable. In response to the Latin encroachment, the Atabeg gathered his Turkoman horsemen, along with the Kurds and local Bedouin tribes under his command, and called his long-standing ally Toghtekin of Damascus and the Mungatites of Shaizar for aid. El-Ghazi used Toghtekin's previous demands for retreat of all Franks beyond the Jordan River as a pretext to invade the Principality of Antioch. At first, El-Ghazi ordered his Mungatite allies to raid Antiochene territory as far as Apamia, while part of his Turkoman force blocked the road to Damascus near Samada. Meanwhile, the Artukid himself raided the borderlands of Edessa to discourage local Latin nobles from helping Antioch, which worked, mainly due to Jocelyn's absence from the region.
Okay, so El-Ghazi is not a fool, I'm getting the impression. He saw this attack from Roger, and is now trying to isolate Roger, apparently, and also using his alliances to attack on like an invasion up here, and now Roger seems like he's gonna have to like move around more. Also, he's blocking the road, so yeah, El-Ghazi definitely now is striking back.
Emboldened by his actions, El-Ghazi moved with his 20,000 men to Kinasin near Aleppo to await for Toghtekin's reinforcements. However, Toghtekin was slow to arrive, and as time passed, El-Ghazi began to grow increasingly angry at Damascus's emir's failure to show up at the scene. When news of the Artukid incursion reached Roger of Salerno, he repeated his actions from his last campaign by gathering his troops near Antioch. But just as he had in 1115, he called for reinforcements from Jerusalem, Edessa and Tripoli. Yet, due to Baldwin's actions and Jocelyn's struggle with the Fatimids and the Bedouins in the south, it took a lot of time before they could muster an army to relieve Antioch. On the other side, El-Ghazi was still waiting for Toghtekin and his troops to arrive. This quickly turned into a stalemate. Roger waited for Baldwin, Pons and Jocelyn, while El-Ghazi waited for his Damascene ally. This uncertain deadlock was broken by the Antiochene nobles, who saw their fiefdoms being devastated by raids and started to pressure Roger of Salerno to take immediate action against El-Ghazi. The only man who opposed this idea was the Patriarch of Antioch, Bernard of Valence. He advised caution and patience, urging the nobles to wait for the arrival of Baldwin II's army. Having been presented with a serious dilemma, Roger of Salerno ultimately chose to confront the Artukid threat directly, without...
Okay, so another aspect that I'm finding very fascinating from this is since these, like, territories are so much more smaller, that they kind of all need to work in alliances. That's kind of something really cool. There seems to be like a sort of alliance system in terms of we're all gonna team up. And we did get a taste of that in the first Crusade series. Near the end, yeah, they'll fight each other and you know, whatnot, but the moment that an outside threat comes in, they all rally together to face whatever threat has, you know, approached. So I really like, I find that interesting that there seems to be alliance systems, because I think it is because they're, I'm assuming it's because they're definitely smaller, and so they need, you know, as much manpower as they can rally up from allies and stuff. That's just an assumption. I don't know the figures of how big the armies they can rally are, so I could be wrong about that. But okay, so this decision, again, they're in a race to see who can wait longer for their allies to show up. But you know, the nobles are getting a little pissy, so now Roger can either be cautious and wait for Jerusalem, which, you know, I think it's not so bad to wait a little. Like, I mean, granted, you know, Ilghazi, the main head of this, if he was active more and he wasn't waiting himself, maybe I could see like the more desperateness to attack. But right now, he's also in the exact same position as Roger in terms of just waiting. So I think Bernard's advice, I think, is the one I feel like he could take. But again, I'm not sure. Maybe Roger's gonna go off and do amazing and win, and we won't have to worry about it. But I'll admit, I think caution ain't so bad to practice. I might go with his advice personally. But I guess we'll see. I don't know. When nobles get pissy and start pushing stuff in this series, is from all the videos that we've seen, it never works out well. But then again, this could be, I guess, the exception to the rule. I don't know. We'll see. Right now.
Jerusalem's assistance. He gathered the Principality's entire force, which consisted of 700 knights, 3,000 to 4,000 Latin infantry, and Armenians, Turcopoles, and other mercenaries. All told, the Antiochenes numbered anywhere between 7,000 to 11,000 men in total. The army also possessed a part of the Antiochene True Cross, which the regent of Antioch decided to use on the battlefield in order to boost the Latins' morale. With all the troops being assembled in Arta, Roger marched down to Samada, where he ambushed and routed a Turkoman detachment guarding the road. Confident in his position, he deployed his camp next to the hill, overseeing a road. But unlike his latest encounter at Samin, the Muslims were well informed about Roger's movement. Not only did Ilghazi's scouts have a strong presence in the area, but they even managed to infiltrate the Crusaders' camp by dressing as local merchants, before providing Ilghazi with a wealth of intel about the Frankish positions. When Antioch's army made camp, Roger of
Dang. And you know, intel gathering is a very underrated aspect of war that I feel like I haven't talked about, but we've seen a lot of, where an army has greater, like, you know, patrols or ability to keep tabs on where the enemy is. And intel gathering is very OP, especially if you're devising strategies and ideas and how to deal with an enemy. So Ilghazi being ahead of that shows that, yeah, he's on top of it, you know? Even though things aren't fully going well at the moment because of his allies, he still seems on top of his, like, on top of it in that regard. So I think Roger might be in trouble there.
Leno decided to strengthen the garrison at a local Atharib castle as well. The Crusader contingent deployed to this task was led by Robert of Vieux-Pont, who secured the fortress with ease. When the defenders saw an Artukid detachment approaching the castle, the Latin commander decided to launch a foray beyond the walls. This move surprised the Turkoman horsemen, and having no time to make a feigned retreat, they were quickly routed.
The freaking feigned retreat. We saw that move used like 100 times in the first Crusade series, and it was really effective for a lot of the part. So I'm wondering if we're gonna see a lot more of it now, huh?
So far, the Crusaders had won a number of small victories, but unbeknownst to them, the Athrib raid was merely a diversion in the south, while the main Muslim force was moving to the north through the mountain passes to surprise Antioch's army.
Oh snap.
Meanwhile, Frankish confidence was plummeting, mainly because of a loud incident before the battle. Following the skirmish near Athrib, a lunatic approached the Frankish camp during the night, simultaneously shouting and laughing.
Oh, what a random character as approach. I love that. Just a lunatic, that's his name.
Out loud about the Crusaders' looming demise. Considering the fact that in the Middle Ages, superstitions still veiled a great influence over the knights and commoners, it definitely had to have an impact to some degree on the Latins' morale. At the same time as the Antiochene troops had to spend a whole night with a madman, Ilghazi managed to surround the Antiochene camp from 3 sides.
Oh my gosh.
On the 28th of June 1119, as the Franks woke up, they saw a terrifying sight of Artikid troops encircling their positions.
Oh no.
The night maneuver of
Oh, that's awful. Oh, that sucks hard. Dude, Roger, it's GG. I mean, I guess if the quality of the knight is, I mean, in the medieval world, especially in Europe, the knight is probably the apex of the warrior until, you know, the superior pike from the Swiss pikemen humbled them a little. But we're not there yet fully. So for now, the knight is the apex warrior, and we've seen that knights are, even when they're outnumbered, are able to do heavy damage to their enemies. They may, even when knights are low in quantity, they are still high in quality as soldiers. So the best I can see is maybe if he just rides and tries to break out and get away. But even then, like, they'll still be harassed by the horse archers and... Yeah, Yeah, I don't see how he's gonna... I don't think winning's the option here, though. I think just trying to escape is now the goal. Dang, and that goes to show you the importance of intel. Roger was too content with his small victories, and, you know, his enemies were keeping tabs on him and well informed of what he was up to and his strength and stuff, so... Again, don't underestimate intel gathering, guys. That is an OP, that is something you need in war for sure, in order to, like, pull off stuff like this.
Ilghazi had shocked the Antiochene regent. The Latin camp was nothing more than a temporary stockade, which did not possess any water or food supply, making it ill-suited to withstand a...
Oh no, now they have to escape. There's no choice.
siege. Initially, Roger sent scouts to look for a gap in Ilghazi's army, but as they searched for a potential weakness in the Artikid line, they were driven back behind the palisade. Realizing the precariousness of his position, Roger hastily deployed his troops in line before the camp, bravely stating that he would like to go hunting. He ordered for a quick mass to be held, after which he divided his force into 4 groups. The right flank was composed of heavy knights, commanded by Monk and Guy de Fremel. Behind them was a second group of Latin horsemen, led by Robert of Saint-Lô. The left flank was composed of Turcopoles and lighter Armenian troops. Lastly, in the centre, Roger of Salerno led the Latin infantry and guarded the Holy Cross of Antioch. The prince hoped that his centre and Armenian left flank would hold out until the right flank of the knights could penetrate the Artikid left, allowing the Antiochene army to break through enemy encirclement.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking escape is the plan. Like, a full-on pitched battle just to see who wins isn't realistic. So I'm like, okay, so break out. And I was assuming that he was going to use, like, the knight to do that, and I'm kind of happy that my theorizing and speculation seems to fall in line with what Roger is actually planning. But, Yeah, those knights are gonna have to really like break through and then try to conduct an orderly withdrawal. But again, like I said, I feel like this is the only plan he can do. But I don't know. Ilghazi, like I said, he seems on top of his game right now. So I'm wondering if he will come back with some ideas or plans to quickly counter this.
On the other side, Ilghazi first ordered his Turkoman horsemen to harass the Franks. Then he used his superior numbers to launch a direct charge of all his forces onto the enemy.
Ooh.
After the initial exchange of bolts and arrows, it became all too clear that the Antiochenes' battle plan wouldn't last. The initial Antiochene charge from the right flank, led by de Fremel's knights, had shell-shocked the Muslim troops at first, but it could not break the Arctic left, and only temporarily managed to slow its advance. The second charge, led by Robert of Saint-Lô, faced the same issue, which resulted in lost momentum.
Oh dang, no, that's bad. That was kind of the whole plan of escaping, but if their momentum is trapped... And there's a gap right here, by the way. Like, I'm wondering if that's gonna come into play, but if they're not able to break through, then I don't see them holding on for long. And Ilghazi still has reserves. I'm wondering if he's gonna use the gap to, like, flank, perhaps. Roger here's, like, in his flank.
As the Latin knights gradually started to lose their ground. At the centre and the left flank, things didn't look any better for Roger. The Turkoman assault proved so effective that after a short bout of fighting, the Turcopoles and Armenians were overrun and fled to the centre, where they disrupted the formation of the Latin footmen. Around the same time, a strong wind named Kamsin arrived. It gathered up dry ground into a cloud of intense dust, and it blew directly in front of the Christians' faces.
Oh my gosh, this is giving me Cannae vibes. Like, that's exactly what happened in the Battle of Cannae, with like the Romans were fighting with the dust to their face, and then Hannibal encircled them. Like, this is kind of giving me shades of Cannae. I mean, granted, their back is actually still trapped, so never mind. But you know, like, just all fronts being squeezed in.
Ability to see their opponents only added to the chaos and disorientation amongst the Latin ranks. It didn't take long before the forces of Antioch were encircled from the left. Undeterred, Roger of Salerno still tried to press forward with his centre and right flank in order to escape a possible encirclement. Only a group of knights, led by Renal Mazois, managed to break through. Giving chase to the Artikid horsemen, Renal managed to rush Ilghazi's force from behind, but because of the intense wounds he sustained during the battle, he was barely able to ride a horse. His retainers instead decided to escort him to the closest tower. Simultaneously, the Antioch army...
Oh dang, I was like, oh, is he about to strike from the rear? But no, he has to leave. Oh man, that sucks. That little brief second of maybe something can be done is now kind of just crushed, you know?
It couldn't break through and found itself completely surrounded. The regent was brave and ferocious in combat, but eventually he was cut by a Saracen blade that pierced through his nose and brain, thus ending his life.
Oh, dang, what an awful way to go. Dude, Antioch just got screwed. This was their whole army, wasn't it? The whole rallying of the force as much as he could. So this is like gonna basically shatter their military strength. Dude, yeah, I guess Bernard was proven right at the end, huh? Caution would have been better.
The sudden death of Roger had paved the way for the Muslims to seize the Golden Cross of Antioch, the main standard of the Latin army.
Dang.
Despite the ferocity of its remaining Christian defenders, the relic fell into the hands of the attackers shortly afterwards. At this point, medieval chroniclers depict over-exaggerated accounts, in which the Muslims were stricken by greed and malice in the presence of the cross, and supposedly started to kill each other over the distribution of the spoils. This is probably apocryphal.
Yeah.
In any case, the fall of the main insignia panicked the Crusaders, who began to flee wherever they could, but to no avail. Almost all the Antiochene knights were killed that day, while only a few Franks managed to survive the battle and retreat to the Bellis Hills to the west and Samada. The Crusaders' casualties were so severe that the location of the battle was given its terrifying name, Ager Sanguinis, the Field of Blood.
Dang, dude, total destruction. I'm happy that he never gave up the Total War background stuff. Like, the animations from Total War. I'm happy that he never gave that up. But, dude, that was humiliating. Antioch just got completely, like, humbled. And I'm, like, worried, like I said, it seemed like he gathered as much as he could, the whole army of Antioch, as much might as it could muster single-handedly. So, again, I'm just thinking, like, they would be so crippled, right, after that? Basically defenseless. Wow. This was a good first episode. I have a time code that I always do with these long videos, so I know when to stop at appropriate times. So I'm going to end the video right here, and tomorrow we're gonna keep seeing what more surprises the Crusade has. So until then, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye everyone.